And we're back with, I am sandwiched. I'm sandwiched by two of my favorite people, my favorite fighters. I've got Brook Jackson here and her attorney, and now my attorney, Robert Barnes. Welcome. Give us an update. I know there was a big hearing last week. So give us a rundown. Maybe, Robert, you want to start?
Yeah, no problem. So the oral argument was presented before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans, Louisiana. I was sick, as was Warner Mendenhall, but Warner was able to slug through it. The good news is we got a panel of judges who come from a more blue-collar background, don't come from a long history of multiple generations of corporate or government work, come from, finished towards the top of their law school class, were law review people. Not just on law review, but usually the editor. Didn't just go to Ivy League schools, went to other schools as well. And that combination of life experience, all have served on the Texas bench, either Texas Supreme Court or Texas trial court. So what you got was a much more practical level of experience in their lives and in their legal careers and in their governmental careers. And what that produced was a much better set of questions than you might get from a typical federal judicial panel. Historically, whoever gets more questions loses. It may seem weird, but it's the way the courts work. Excuse me. So I was looking forward to the fact that Warner got fewer questions than the government did and then Ventavia did. So that was the first good sign. The second sign is they understood the core of the issues, that the issues are whether the government should have been allowed to even intervene at such a late stage of the case after they declined to intervene early on. What the government really did is they dragged out the case, saying we're looking at it, we're investigating it, we're researching it, and they just lied to Brook all the way through, which Brook can speak to. Once we got involved, we figured out that was happening. Brook was able to talk. She had also been misled by even her prior lawyers. There's a common belief out there that when you file what's called a QTAM case, you're filing it on behalf of the U.S. government. The federal rules require that initially, but only for a very short period of time, be sealed from the public. The only reason for that is to allow the government time to investigate and so that they don't tip off the defendant, so the defendant doesn't flee or do something else. It is not intended to hide the whistleblower's information. And indeed, filing a QTAM case does not make it that you suddenly have to be private and secret about what's going on. But a lot of QTAM lawyers and government lawyers too will lie to a whistleblower and tell them you filed a QTAM case, you can't talk about the underlying facts anymore. You can't talk about the existence of the QTAM case, but you can always talk about the underlying facts. So British Medical Journal fully investigated it, fully researched it, fully vetted it, and they came to the conclusion that what Brook was alleging was absolutely true, which was that the COVID vaccine clinical trials were a complete joke. Nothing about them met any level of standard for saying something is safe, for saying something is effective, or for simply being able to figure out whether or not it's even a vaccine. So, because you had people rolling in the hallways, you had people's private medical information tattooed on the walls, you had adverse events not being reported, you had not even blinding people, which is critical to any degree of accuracy or efficacy measurements in a clinical test. So she went to her bosses. They said they would try to fix it. They didn't. So she went to those bosses. They said, okay, we'll shut it all down and we'll restart anew. And then she figured out they were not going to do that and went to the FDA. And the same day she went to the FDA, she gets fired later that same day. So she then goes to the government, gives it to the government, and Bill Barr hides it for the better part of 6 months. Then the Biden administration comes in and hides it for another year because they don't want the world to know that this is an unsafe, ineffective, therapeutic drug that doesn't act as a vaccine at all. And now those were the terms that the government required. The contract with the Defense Department was that Pfizer would deliver a safe, effective vaccine for the prevention of COVID-19 at speed and scale. So those 6 requirements. All they delivered was speed and scale. What they delivered was dangerous, ineffective, not a vaccine, never prevented COVID-19. Indeed, you have a higher risk currently of getting COVID-19 if you've taken the COVID shot than if you've never taken the COVID shot. So once we got involved, we got the British Medical Journal to publish their report. And we got the government to unseal it finally. That got the attention of the world, and Brook going public saved a lot of lives. But what the government did is the government sat back and said, okay, we're not going to get involved. Okay, we're going to stick it with you guys. We go through, Pfizer initially gets a dismissal. We get it to a second chance to sue again. And it looks like we're going to prevail. And literally a week or two before the hearing, this is now 3.5 or so years into the process, all of a sudden the government shows up and says, please let us intervene solely to dismiss, but we're not going to tell you why. All we're going to tell you is that we think that the government's current public health policy says to not support qui tam cases, which makes no sense.
That was Biden's DOJ or Trump's DOJ?
That was Biden's DOJ.
Okay.
So we're now into Biden's DOJ, though I would note the lawyers assigned the case at the DOJ level never really change. Doesn't matter whether it's Trump 1, Biden 1, Trump 2. Same Pfizer-oriented lawyers end up getting assigned these qui tam cases, which is a serious flaw that they need to fix at the Justice Department. They need to reassign everybody that's in the qui tam division. There are people that aren't there to out fraud. They're there to cover it up. They then leave. They either start in private practice working for Big Pharma, then go to DOJ. And then after they leave DOJ, they're right back in Big Pharma. So you got this wrong kind of wheel going on. So we said, look, they didn't give any reason. You have to have good cause to intervene late in the case. They didn't give that good cause. They in order to seek a dismissal, you also have to have a justifiable cause. They didn't give a justifiable cause. They didn't say the evidence was weak. They didn't say the legal theory was wrong. In fact, they didn't disagree on either one of those. They simply said public policy. That's not grounds to do it. And then last but not least, they dismissed her retaliation claim on the grounds that we couldn't prove that they knew that she'd gone to the FDA. And our argument was we got a pretty strong inference, and that's what discovery is for. When she's fired, literally hours right after they find out she went to the FDA. So the Fifth Circuit asked very good questions, and questions that would suggest we have an above average chance at getting the case reinstated. And then maybe, finally, the Trump Justice Department will do the correct thing and join the case rather than keep seeking its dismissal.
Yeah, well, Judge Elrod was the same judge that ruled in our favor for the FDA case. So I'm a big fan of hers, and I noticed that too. She seemed to grill them a little harder than she grilled Warner. What about you, Brooke? What are your sentiments following that? Do you have more hope now?
Yeah, I would say so. Just being able to be there in front of the government and my attorneys make the arguments they did, there is a satisfaction in that. I'm sure you understand that, Mary. I was a little disappointed. I wasn't able to sit at the counsel table. I had to sit back in the jury, or not jury, but the I guess spectator section. But yeah, I mean, it's just incredible to me that here we are almost 6 years later with a new Justice Department, with Secretary Kennedy there, and they're still fighting this. It is a tough pill to swallow.
Do we know if Pam Bondi is aware of this case?
Oh yes, she's fully aware. So pay for play Pam Bondi got her reputation in Florida for that's people may forget before there was an auto pen scandal, there was a robo pen scandal involving a major mortgage industry across the country during the great financial crisis that helped precipitate it. And in Florida, they were just auto signing a range of mortgage documents in order to repackage them and sell them up to Wall Street. That was illegal under Florida law. That meant all those people had a right to set aside their mortgages. So why did that never happen? It's because the Attorney General at the time of the state of Florida was Pam Bondi. And those big donors made, those big industries made big donations to her. And that's how she got the reputation as pay for play Pam. So I was a skeptic as soon as she was put in, but people said, don't worry, Yakov Roth is going to be on it. He's the number 2 at the appellate division. The number 1 at the appellate division was going to pay attention. Other people were going to pay attention. And instead, as soon as Pam Bondi got in, who, for those that don't know, Pam Bondi was the private lawyer for Pfizer during COVID. Okay, that's who Pam Bondi is. hundreds of thousands of dollars she received. Not only did she not disqualify or recuse herself from presiding over the proceedings, she apparently gave the instruction to maintain the case in the same form it's been in. So this is one of many scandals. There's multiple antitrust cases she's interfered with. There's multiple civil rights cases in Harmy Dillon's division that she's interfered with. She's undermined Second Amendment defense in multiple cases. She frankly doesn't. She runs around like she's a sorority prosecutor or something, with local news press conferences for cases that should be the local DA, not the Attorney General of the United States. So she's a systemic problem. And she has another opportunity to fix it. We'll see if she fixes it. She has an opportunity to fix it before the Fifth Circuit rules. She'll have another opportunity to fix it once the Fifth Circuit rules. And if she continues not to do so, then it will just show that the depth to which she is directly involved and implicated in continuing to be pay for play Pam and covering up the biggest health scandal in American political history.
I mean, she doesn't seem to be very popular. Why do you think Trump keeps her? What?
Loyalty. So Trump thinks the mistake he made in his first term was not that he picked people that were loyal to the swamp versus loyal to his base. He thinks his mistake was he picked people that weren't personally loyal to him. And Pam Bondi's long been personally loyal to him, going back to her days as Florida Attorney General. And so he confuses personal loyalty with efficacy and competency, even though the complaints he is hearing, because she's screwing up everything, not just the Pfizer case. Pam touches it, it turns to crap. So, whether it's James Comey case, other cases, et cetera. So she's just not capable, nor is her deputy, Todd Blanche, capable. Now, Harmy Dillon would be capable. Harmy Dillon took on some good cases during COVID. Gail Slater at the Antitrust Division, she's very capable. To see them as 1 and 2 at the Attorney at Justice Department would probably be a major improvement. I know there are people asking me to try to get Bobby Kennedy to go over and be Attorney General. He's a little busy at the moment with enough issues. But there has to be an improvement in the Justice Department, because it's not just these Maha cases. It's the fluoride cases. It's the case against you in terms of how the state of Texas harassed doctors and other medical professionals and legal professional groups across the country. Trump has even asked them to open up an investigation into the California State Bar trying to persecute John Eastman. To my knowledge, they haven't done so yet. I know Harmy Dillon's trying to, but to my knowledge, Bondi doesn't want much controversy. She just wants to be seen as popular, successful, and line her pockets. And that means she'll stay away from really tough cases. And that's cases like this that expose, the Trump voter does not want to see Anthony Bourla at another dinner at the White House, unless it's a dinner in honor of his public execution.
Amen.
I love that. How long?
He's wild. You should have just had Robert on, and I could have finished cleaning my house, Mary. He does so good.
Well, when can we expect a decision, do you think?
So I think within 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
Within 3 to 4. Sometimes these go quicker, sometimes they go longer. But if it's a favorable ruling, then it's going to be 3 to 4 months.
And if it's unfavorable, is it over?
No, we go up to the Supreme Court of the United States. So okay. This won't end until this. They may the government. I mean, I can't imagine the government would appeal to SCOTUS, but they might. There's some idiots over there. But I could see Ventavia appealing to the Supreme Court, because they'll do anything other than face discovery in this case. The one thing people should know above all else, they've been paranoid of discovery in this case. They've gone to ridiculous lengths to avoid discovery. That means there's smoking gun discovery we haven't even seen, other than what's come out of the FOIA case. There must be internal communications where they're basically admitting that they knew the product was bogus and they were going to rush it anyway.
Well, I mean, haven't they had ample time to destroy all that?
You would think so, but these kind of big corporations have a habit of not effectively doing that. The other problem is they've got too many subcontractors. A lot of these subcontractors is a way to evade individual liability. But a downside of that is you don't know who's got records where. And remember, they did these tests globally. And there's reason to believe that they contaminated the ones in Argentina, that they contaminated ones in Brazil, that they contaminated ones in Europe. I mean, the head of Europe, the European Union, von der Leyen, is still losing her text messages and her emails from Pfizer. My guess is those were not, hey, everything's going great. So I suspect something somewhere is buried someplace that they can't fully dispatch.
Brooke, remind us what you saw when you were on site overseeing these research trials. Tell us exactly what fraud you saw taking place.
Well, it was, a quick 18 days. But while I was there, I want to say that the most important thing for me when I was auditing the patients in the clinical trial was the lack of informed consent. So for me, that is the number one thing that that we have to do in a clinical trial, that you have to do before you get a surgery. The informed consent is everything. It talks to the patient about what they're getting involved in, what their responsibilities are as a patient, making appointments, making sure that they're communicating any adverse events. So it's a time when that informed consent process is happening for you to explain, the potential risks, the potential benefits, what their responsibilities are, what our responsibilities were. And when I walked in and started, really digging into these charts, they weren't even providing the patients with informed consent. And it's not just a moment where you sign a document, right? It is a process, and it begins when they enter the trial and it ends when they're finished at their study completion visit. So it's something that we're constantly talking to patients about. But when you're forging patient signature and not completing the process, that it was a problem for me, and something that I documented every single day. So that was number one.
They were forging signatures?
Yes. Yeah. So when I would flag an informed consent, and so I had posted little sticky notes everywhere, and that's what we do as auditors, right? We flag things. So I would say every day I would flag 3 to 5 informed consent issues where there wasn't a signature. And it wasn't just the patient's signature, but it was a signature of the investigator, the clinician that's overseeing the trial would have to attest to answering any questions that the patient had. Again, it is a process. I would say, with this study, although it wasn't a complicated study, for me to go into a patient's room and have a conversation about the clinical trial, and of course my skill would get easier and better every time I do it, but at least an hour going over the informed consent, which was 28 pages if I'm remembering correctly. So it just takes time. But yeah, they were so interested in getting patients in and out of the door that they were not consenting them. Sometimes they would inject them with either the placebo or the vaccine, and then they would give them informed consent. So it was just it was a small clinic. We had 5 rooms, so it was just like in and out, in and out. But I would flag these informed consents where signatures were missing, and then like a day or two I would come back and the signature would be there, and I knew that the patient had not come in. I would have known. I would have seen the patient. I was in clinic 12, 14, 16 hours a day sometimes, and I know this patient did not come in. So somebody had seen that I'd flagged a missing signature and came back and forged the patient's signature. And what I could do was compare the signature. And again, because I'm an auditor, not that I'm looking for things that you're doing wrong, but it's a teaching moment. It's an opportunity for me to make sure you don't do that again, and the patient knows. But I could compare the signature from their driver's license to the one on the informed consent. And I could tell that they were mismatched. But that was the number one thing. But Dr. Bennett, I saw so many things: not reporting adverse events, including some of those that were serious, not testing women who were of childbearing potential for whether or not they were pregnant, not testing patients. And of course, this was up to the investigator, but not testing patients who were calling in, reporting that they had, gotten sick post their injection. Sloppy, certainly a lot of sloppy research, and maybe we could have got through some of that. But the majority of the things that I was finding were things that should have excluded the patient data set from ever being considered in the overall determination of whether that stuff was safe or effective.
How many patients were were tested at that clinic or went through the trial at that clinic?
So we had approximately 1,500 patients between 3 clinical trial sites. But when you look at the final determination of the efficacy, the 95%, we know there's things wrong with that. But there were 170 efficacy endpoints. So how many of those 170 came from my clinical trial site? They won't tell us. I know, but they've never disclosed it.
And I
So,
think you said, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mary.
Well, I was going to say, I think you said the clinicians were unblinded, or how did that happen? Well, how did that work?
Yeah. So during the clinical trial, when we were screening a patient, so a patient would sign informed consent, and we would review their medical history, what concomitant medications they were taking, and they're assigned what we call a screening number. So we have to go into the computer, assign this number, and then proceed with the study visit to determine their eligibility, review all the inclusion criteria, make sure women aren't pregnant, make sure men, promise to do what they have to do to keep their significant other from getting pregnant. So there were just all these things that we had to do. That's part of the clinical trial. You can think of the protocol as a guide, a map. We do step 1, step 2, step 3, and that's something that Pfizer provided us. So any deviation from that is something that we would either have to note or report to the institutional review board that's overseeing the conduct and safety and wellness of the patients that were participating. Sorry, I lost track. What were you saying?
The clinicians were unblinded, so
Yes,
they knew who
yes.
got the shots and who didn't when they were, reporting their
Yes.
outcomes. Is that right?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mary. So after you determine a patient's eligible, then you go back into this online system and you give them a randomization assignment, and that's done randomly through the computer, and that assigns them to placebo, or that assigns them to the actual investigational product. And what we were doing was printing out that drug assignment and actually putting it in their medical chart. And every research center will do research differently. Some clinics will use all paper charts. Others will use, EMR or electronic recording of this stuff. But we use paper charts. So everything, that we would document, from blood pressure to, physical exam, is done on paper. And in the chart, we were placing their randomization assignment. So anytime the doctor would look at the chart, he could flip right to the section and see, oh, well, this patient got the actual drug or the placebo. And then, it's hard for him. It introduces a bias that, it interrupts and the entire data set. You can't rely on the data because, again, he's biased now. He knows that the patient got this or the patient got that. So it's
one thing you talked about, which I haven't heard before, is the IRB. Were people, did they respond to you? Did you talk to the IRB? And the IRB is sort of the oversight institution for all research. Like if you're doing a project, you have to get it approved by the IRB. So they're like the police of the research project.
They are.
Them?
And they have obligations to the FDA as well. If we as a site have a patient who experiences adverse events, they have an obligation to report to the FDA as well. Any like consenting issues, that was a huge issue, like I mentioned before. We had to report those to the IRB. And unfortunately, Mary, I didn't make it far enough. 18 days was not a long time. I spent the majority of that time dealing with HR type issues and trying to make sure that these patients were safe and that their events were reported correctly. So as far as what happened with the site, if there was ever an inspection, I know there was never an FDA audit, which there certainly should have been. There could still be one. I think there should be one of the IRB. For Ventavia and other sites. I know that there was fraud elsewhere. You know, I've had investigators from other sites contact me and tell me directly that they were receiving, you know, directives from Pfizer to record or not record certain events a certain way. So I just wish I hate it because it's I still love research, but it's made me think back on how many other clinical trials that I helped with, and I worry that I helped bring to market things that are hurting people like this is.
You know, I became disillusioned with research during residency because I saw how sloppy it tends to be. And, you know, for when you're in training, you're basically just helping your attendings crank out as many studies as they can. So that helps their career. What I saw was these were not very well done studies. We were just trying to publish. And it really disillusioned me on research for me. And this what happened. It happened during COVID, right? Is I learned to rely on my clinical experience and what I was seeing firsthand, rather than what's published in a journal where there's all sorts of ulterior motives and financial issues that most people are not aware of. So
yeah, talk about disillusioned, you know, I mean, there's, you know, I come from a military family, so it's like chain of command, right? So I'm thinking at the level that I'm doing clinical research, that when it goes to Pfizer, that Pfizer's, I know this sounds, I hate it when I say this, but Pfizer's reporting as they should, right, to FDA, and then FDA is doing their job. And so I just made that assumption that everybody had integrity like I did, and when you see something wrong, just say it. You know, so what if we don't include 1,500 patients in your data analysis? Exclude them.
right.
They're corrupt. You know, so yeah, I don't know. It's hard, Mary, because I've seen amazing things that I helped in phase one, those early stages, phase two even, that are still to this day used as standard of care. So I was a research participant myself. I'm a mother because of clinical research. I had to do IVF in a clinical trial. So research gave me my kids. So I you know, I love it. I still have hope for it. But it's been a wild ride, that's for sure.
Well, it can't all be bad, but you know, you basically back up that research with clinical experience. And usually, when the clinical experience doesn't match the research, the FDA steps in and pulls the product. We've definitely seen that with other things, Vioxx. There've been antibiotics. Or, you know, it's there's a checks and balance system, but not for these shots, obviously. So unfortunately, we have to tie things up, but we'll have you back hopefully when we have some good news. I am optimistic. I feel like Judge Elrod and I see things the same way. So she gives me hope.
Well, yeah, because we're prisoners of that. You know, I'm a prisoner of hope. I'm always hopeful. I'm hopeful that, you know, through this case, we can get justice for the people that have been harmed. You know, you know, I've said from the very beginning, and Robert kind of helped me understand this, you know, that this case will be won in the eyes of the public. And so I feel like I've already won that. I'm really mad that I got fired. I've never been fired before. So that retaliation piece is my thing. You know, that's what I'm asking for. But for the lawsuit, the False Claims Act, this KETAM action, it's for the American people who you know, trusted in this, and especially for the people that have been hurt. I mean, I think about them every day, and the only reason I'm still here is because of them. I want to walk away, but I can't.
I have to throw in one more thing. I mean, yesterday in clinic, I saw a patient who got his 4th COVID shot and he didn't want it. His primary care doctor pressured him into getting it. He's in his 50s. He has some mild health problems, but nothing major. He got coerced into getting it. And now he is like, just his whole body stiffened up. neck, shoulders, hips, so that he could not even move. And he was just in agonizing pain, and now is on high dose steroids. And of course, the primary care doctor will not even acknowledge that the shot could have had anything to do with it. So it's still out there, even though, the pandemic is long gone and people think no one's getting these shots. They unfortunately are still getting these shots. So thank you for taking this battle on. I know it's been grueling. You've been at it now for 5 years, which is hard to believe. But thank you. And thank you, Robert, for representing her and being so outspoken and not shy to talk about it. And we will hopefully have y'all on soon to celebrate.
We
Absolutely.
appreciate it, Mary. Thank you so much. And we'll see you Friday.
Oh, yeah. At the board. All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. And we will be back next week and have a look at our sponsors, because without them, this would not be possible. And I am very grateful that they are willing to put their name next to mine. We'll see you next week.